Hi everyone, I'm JD from Willow Journals. Welcome back to my channel. I have got a Junk Journal with Me episode working in my reading journal, and today I'm working on 2-page spreads for 2 books. The first book is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and the second book is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. So I have printed out the book covers and I tried to take some arty shots of them if possible. So this one, The Song of Achilles, I've got my fairy lights strung up along my wall, and I just held up the book in front of those fairy lights and thought that kind of could symbolize the stars. And then for the other one, it was just a library book that I borrowed, so I went to the library and just held the book in front of the library bookshelves just to remind me that, this was a library book and this is where I got it from. And then to decorate the page, I really enjoyed decorating the page for the Song of Achilles in particular. I had this vintage book page from a book called The Heroes, and I think it's based on Greek mythology, and I think it was a retelling of the stories. And I noticed while I was flipping through the pages, it mentioned the centaur Chiron, and he's featured in the Song of Achilles, and he was actually my favourite character in the Song of Achilles. He wasn't even in it that much, but I really enjoyed reading about the centaur, and I thought, when I come to do my page about the Song of Achilles, I'll include that book page, or one of the book pages that has the name Chiron on it. And so I put that there. They spell it differently. I think it's with an A in the Song of Achilles, and in this book they spelled it with an E, so I'm not entirely sure it's the same character, but I know they're both centaurs. And then I'm just going to use that as a little background collage piece, and I'll stick on the photo on top, and I love how that photo looks with the fairy lights in the background. And then I've just got some washi tapes with galaxy themes on them, so stars, constellations, planets, that kind of thing. And I chose more of the blue toned ones to go with the blue cover. And that's pretty much all I do to decorate that page, because I've got a limited amount of space, so I do want to make sure I've got enough writing space. And let me just chat about this book and what I wrote on the page. So first of all, I always start off with the format. So this was a book that I borrowed from a friend. Why I read it? Because this friend read it first, and she absolutely loved it. I think it's like one of her favourite books. She just thought it was really, really beautiful, a really beautiful story. And so whenever anyone raves about a book, I want to read it. And every book I read, I'm wanting to love it. I'm hoping to love it and thinking that I might love it. This book, I was, thinking I might like it because she loves it so much, and then I read it and I went into it thinking it was about one thing and it ended up being about another, so that kind of threw me because my expectations weren't met, and it took me quite a while through the book to figure out what the book was about. So the whole time I thought the book was going to be about, like, the focus was going to be on Greek mythology and knowing that story. And because when I was a kid, I read an Enid Blyton book. I can't remember what it was called. Tales of Long Ago, I think it was called. And I really, really enjoyed that book. It was all just short stories based on Greek mythology, like Pandora and Narcissus. And I don't know if I'm saying all these names right, but all of these different characters from Greek mythology. I really enjoyed reading that. So I've had an interest in that kind of storytelling, those stories. So I thought that this book would be, sort of a retelling of Greek mythology and something that I could learn about, because, it's kind of fun to learn about those stories and who the people are, how they relate to each other and all that kind of stuff. So I was, really excited and looking forward to learning about all of that and getting to know that. But it was just a backdrop, is what I finally learned near the end of the book. That was all just the background, a setting that was just context for the main story, the main focus, which is essentially a love story. So here I am thinking, oh, I'm going to learn about Greek mythology and all this stuff. And you do a little bit. But that's not the focus. The focus is on two characters and their relationship. And it's pretty much, straight romance with a mythological background. And I don't really know if I've read many romance books, and the few romance books that I have read, then they're not my favorite. I guess it's not a genre that stands out to me. So yeah, I just didn't enjoy this book as much as I thought I would, as much as I hoped I would. Also because I didn't like either of the main characters very much. I mean, they were great, they were fine. It wasn't that I didn't like them, it was just that I didn't care about them. I wasn't really interested in them as characters. I mean, they were fine, they were well developed, they were fine characters. But yeah, I couldn't get behind the love story, I guess, because I didn't really care about either of the two characters. But it was readable. It was a bit of a slow read in some parts. Some parts were quite quick. There was a lot of action in some parts. I really enjoyed the beginning, the setup. And I think, again, that's why I went into it with these expectations that, oh, we're going to find out the story about this character and that character and what happens there and what happens there. It's like, no, we're only going to focus really on these two lovers, basically. And I wanted to know more about, well, what about the king here? And what about the princess? And what happens with those two over there? What happens with getting that kingdom back? And what happens with this? But it didn't really resolve any of that because the focus was on these two other characters that I didn't actually care about. So yeah, I did enjoy the character of Odysseus, and he was quite funny, and I really enjoy smart, funny, wise characters that when I read, especially fantasy books. Sorry about my cat making all this noise in the background. But yeah, whenever I read fantasy books, my favourite characters are always the witty, smart ones, I suppose, anyway. But yeah, it did have a tender, touching ending, I suppose. But all in all, not my favourite book. I gave it 2 stars. I guess 2 because it was readable, and I can see how other people would like it. I could definitely see the setting is quite amazing. If you're into this love story, if you like these characters and you really care about them, I can see how you'd be very, very invested going through the ups and downs of their journey. Like, yeah, you would be totally in there. So I definitely can see why other people would like it, because pretty much every review I've heard, people love this book. People absolutely love this book. And maybe if I went into it with the right expectations, knowing what it was about, I just did not know it was going to be a pure love story. And there were other things in the book that I wanted to know about more that we didn't spend time finding out about that at all. So yeah, I'm just pulling off this bit of washi tape because I needed room to write the date I started reading and the date I finished. But yeah, that's basically what I wrote about, my expectations going in and how it had to all be changed and all that kind of thing. I just got my list here of books that I've read for the year, and that's where I record the date I started reading, the date I finished. Moving on to the next book, totally different type of book. And this one I just tried to copy the spiral, the orange spiral from the cover, just as a backdrop because there wasn't really anything I had to decorate this page, and just freehanded that spiral, and then I'll glue on the book, photo of the book. So this book, it was a library book. I borrowed it. Why I read it, I have read 3 of John Green's books in the past, and I really, really enjoyed The Fault in Our Stars. I thought it might all be hype, but that book actually really affected me. It really moved me. It was at a time when I was going through my own depression and anxiety journey. So I think for that reason, it hit me right where I was at, about meaning, about purpose, about life. So that book really impacted me and helped me. It really, really helped me. So yeah, I then wanted to read more books from John Green. I quite enjoyed Looking for Alaska. That was pretty good. But then I read An Abundance of Catherine's, and that was so boring. That I felt like that one was a waste of my time. And so then I wasn't sure if I wanted to read anymore. I then watched Paper Towns, I think it's called, on TV, because I didn't know if I wanted to read the book after reading Abundance of Catherine's. And the movie I didn't particularly like. I found it a bit boring. So again, that's why I was like, oh, do I read Turtles? I don't know. But then I was talking to my friend, the one who likes books, and we had this really, really long book chat, and she was telling me all about the books that she's read and recommended me a whole bunch. And so this was one of the ones. She said it was worth a read. She didn't say it was like amazing or anything, but she said it was worth reading. Because she also thought Catherine's was a bit boring too, but this one picked up its game. So I read it. I gave it a go. It wasn't as boring as Catherine's, but it wasn't, again, my favourite book. I only gave it 2 stars. It got me, like, it was readable. I could get through it. That's usually how I define my 2 stars. A 1-star book is one that takes me forever, that's slow, and that I don't really want to finish. A 2-star book it's boring, it's not grabbing me, but it's engaging enough and a simple enough read, fast-paced enough that I can get through it. So yeah, there were some good parts to it, I will say. That's why it has the 2 stars. I guess it's a book about this character who has anxiety, OCD, and we really get into her world. So I can see again how someone would like this book if they could really connect with this character, or even if you don't have anxiety or OCD, that you would be able to be like, oh, okay, I see what it's like in her world. I can see the value of it for that. I think I'm in a place in my life right now where I didn't really connect with this girl's journey. Maybe if I was going through anxiety at the time, this book would have been like, oh, thank you, a character who gets me or something. But I don't know. I didn't really care about any of the characters. They're all a bit flat. And that's the main thing, I guess, that I'm looking for if I'm really loving a book. The story is great and the characters I really care about. That's when I'm moved. So yeah, none of the characters really grabbed me. It was just a bit surface, a bit shallow. But I can see, the main theme of that anxiety and what it's like, that world was, quite well defined. And, the main point about the spiral, how it feels like a tightening, and that your world gets smaller and smaller and smaller when you're overwhelmed with anxiety, and when you're overwhelmed with, your thoughts just take you down this spiral. And I know what that feels like when your thoughts spiral. I've never seen it as a world getting smaller and smaller, though. Maybe that's why the analogy didn't quite fit for me, or the metaphor didn't quite fit for me, because I understand the metaphor. That's not how I would describe my anxiety when I had it. Yes, I did have spiraling thoughts, but the part where it feels like your world gets tighter and tighter, I don't feel like I had that necessarily. But I really enjoyed the metaphor of when she realised she still has anxiety by the end of the book, but the point is now she seems to embrace it a little bit more. Her life is a little bit more room to breathe because she's learnt some tools and strategies. Like, she sees a psychologist and all these things. She realises that the spiral also expands. If you go up for the spiral, there's a world of possibilities, and she learns that there's a world of possibilities, I guess, ahead of her. And so she has hope by the end of the book, I suppose. So I enjoyed that metaphor. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a cool way of thinking of a spiral. Instead of it going smaller and smaller and tightening and being constricted by your thoughts, to know, look up. Just all you need is a change of perspective. That's what I like. It's just about a change of perspective. You still have the thoughts. The thoughts are still there. The anxiety is still there. It's just the change of perspective. Look up instead of look down. And look up at how it expands and your world gets bigger, and there's possibilities and there's hope. So I really enjoyed that. That had a bit of depth for me at the end of the book. But yeah, like I said, story, wasn't that interested. Characters, wasn't that interested. And the main story, the main mystery, there's this missing person, and financial reward, and that was the start. So I thought the book was going to be about that, a lot more about the mystery, and I do, research a little bit here, but it was kind of, again, like a backdrop to the main story of her anxiety and her trying to navigate relationships and navigate her life. And yeah, I thought my expectation was, well, we're going to learn about the mystery. It's all about the mystery, and that never really took over the story and wasn't even very interesting either. Thankfully, the mystery did resolve, so that was good. But it kind of, again, fell flat. It was all a bit flat for me. But in terms of, the world of anxiety and that metaphor of the spiral, that was worth reading, I think. And at least I could get something deep from that and take away a new way of thinking about something. So yeah, I just wanted to fill in this little gap and do a little drawing when I don't have anything of my own ephemera or decorations to put on the page. I like to draw something, so I just drew a turtle. I drew it first in grey lead, and now I'm going over it in fine liner. This is just a black micron pen, and yeah, just freehanded a little turtle. And it's not anything perfect or amazing, but for me, it just reminds me, that's the book. The turtles metaphor, that's another one. So the idea of like a myth or an idea or theory of the world where what is the world, how is the world floating, what's it stand on? And the idea that it sits on a turtle. And then you're like, well, but what does that turtle sit on? And it's like another turtle. And then it's just like turtles all the way down. And this idea that this girl with anxiety, she's trying to find the first turtle, the base turtle to land on. And to just be okay with the fact that there's no base turtle kind of thing. I think that was the idea. I read it to find out. But that kind of idea that you want something stable to stand on. So yeah, those are my thoughts on those two books. Yeah, I'd say give it a go, read it, and see how you go. Thanks for watching. To my beautiful patrons who supported me in September. I could not do this without you, so thank you so much for allowing me to create and share videos for yet another month. If you'd like to become a patron in October, the link will be below in the description box. That's where you get access to behind the scenes looks, sneak peeks, first access to my journals. At the Ruby level, you get all printables from my Etsy shop. Emerald level, you get extra printables, and then there are some mail tiers as well. I'm also running my courses, my journaling courses again in October, so feel free to sign up for any of those. Just send me an email and check all the links in the description box below for ways to contact me and be part of the world of Willow Bound Journals.